And I'm really glad, I really love talking about this topic of regeneration and especially holistic management. And how do we do something as complex as system thinking and bring it actually to life? And I feel like when we start into combining these two topics of regeneration and holistic management, we always have to look into like, where do we actually come from? Just for a quick second, especially farmers who have been told in their education from the system, from an industry, to work like this, to control, to be as efficient and productive as possible. And you're trained like this. So it's ingrained in you, you have to do this. But on the other hand, suddenly people are telling you that you're also responsible for this. This is the Baltic Sea, one of the most polluted waters on this earth, which is really sad because it had been one of the most beautiful ones. And now they also tell you that you're also responsible for this, which happened in Germany, which is kind of still a confusing thing for me to see these pictures and know that this were both sites in my home country and not that far away somewhere on the planet. And due to climate change, but also through our farming practices and our agricultural practices. And literally, soil is leaving us, what you can see here, especially on the UK and the French and Dutch border. So if we know all of this, like I was trained to do this as a farmer, and now I'm responsible for this, I still have questions, because after all, it's like, what actually about all the other things that are important to me or are like my life? What about my land, my animals, dealing with my neighbors, my community, my finances, my family, and how to work in this complexity? And one part of this, especially around the land, is this term regenerative agriculture. And regenerative agriculture is still something that has been defined in different ways. Even Bayer is now convinced that they're doing regenerative agriculture. So that's why before we dive into like, what are we actually doing, I like always to go with a definition. And when we look at the word regenerate, then we come from Latin, as a lot of our words come from. And it is this re about again and to produce or to create. So to constantly create something, not just once, but over and over again, revitalize, recreate. And if we use this now in a term of regenerative agriculture or regeneration, doesn't this mean that we are co-creating conditions for all life to flourish? And that's basically connecting to biomimicry in the term of creating conditions conducive for life. I think in a similar way, I didn't get it 100%, but in the way of we are co-creating for all life to flourish. And farmers have been doing this without this term for decades and hundreds of years. And what they can do, or what we can do, is impressive. I'm looking at pictures from like Australia in 1992, and then again in 1999. It's the same landscape, the same spot. Mexico, coming from a mostly desert to you can't even recognize it anymore. Zimbabwe, like all over the world, we can change back, restore back in a very fast way, no matter where we are. And for me, when I came into regenerative agriculture, it was always the question, is this magic? Is this the same on the left and the right? Like, what is happening? Is it really practices? Is it really specific things that we are doing with the land? Or what is behind? And what I found and what brought me here and what brings me also in the continuous work that I'm doing is what's called holistic management. And that comes, in this case, from Greek and Latin, in thinking about the whole, with meaning holistic, where we don't think in parts, but we think in that everything is connected and can only be referenced as a whole, and we cannot take it apart and understand it by itself. It's all connected. And by management, which I found very funny, that it originally comes from the word to lead a horse with the hand around a manege or like a circle. So taking something, basically setting a goal and then guiding this way. So what the farmers have done on these pictures is, yes, they use specific tools to create from this to this or from this to this. But it was mostly about this management aspect. They do something different in the way they do it. And holistic management is one framework that describes this process of making decisions differently within a framework, within a set of mindset change or mindset approach and understanding, and actually then bringing it into my management. This is on one slide what you can do for your whole life, same with biomimicry, to improving again and again what we're doing. And it's especially getting out of this perspective of looking at one component, looking at one indicator, and rather trying to see the world like this. So when we go out, or when we train, or when I train and talk with farmers, it's from getting them from this CO2 to what has the land to tell you? How can you see that the land is responding in a way that you want the land to develop? Like, what do you actually want with the land to develop? So in these conversations about seeing, observing, listening, but also bringing in my own ideas, how I want to shape this place, what I see in restoring this place, and making it broader, not focusing in on one enemy, one problem, one thing, but trying to get a whole feeling of the health of what is actually happening. And the same on the costs and the being effective and efficient way. It's getting away from looking just at a specific financial number, but looking at like, what is all the things that I need to take in account? And that might be my personal price that I get for a pound of meat, or how much it costs to get some seeds. But there's all the other aspects that we need to consider. My favorite part is people are like, okay, I get this. Everything is connected. And then you ask them, so which tools can you use? And a lot of the tools that you then get is technology-based. If it is an actual technology, an app, my favorite answer is always like, oh, we can develop an app for this. Or we just need satellites, or just a better tractor, a better seeder, a better treated like fertilizer, whatever it is. And another aspect of seeing everything as a whole is also considering I have more than technology as tools, and just broadening also this other perspective. So a lot what we're doing is coming from the mindset first and working with what have I learned, what was I trained, and what is actually a helpful approach in seeing and understanding the world as a whole, and something that functions in patterns as a whole. So mindset, okay, I see my land in a different way. I know I have more tools available. I have a very broad understanding. And then comes what is this holistic context, this key piece. And that is something we can use when working with the land, but that is also something that me and my wife have defined. That is something that I define with teams in organizations, or in other like community space, is, okay, if we know we are connected, if we know we want to do something good, why me here? Why us in this team with this purpose? And that is what this holistic context piece is. It is basically defining what are we talking about, the farm, us as a couple, our team, and then describing for us, why are we here? And what is more important than anything to us? Whose support do we need? What do we need as quality of life? How do we want to behave to still keep the support from everyone else that we need? And how do we want this land to be far into the future? Not with every detail, but with like, we want it healthy, we want clean air, we want flowing water, whatever it is. So you try to describe something that is not a generic vision. You describe something that is so dear to your heart that you really want to work within this context and making your decision within this context. And a lot about it is bringing back quality of life. I know this from people, from friends working currently still in urban corporate jobs, but also from farmers a lot, is like, ask them, what is quality of life for you? What is quality of life to you? And each of us have certain aspects, certain things that are way more important to us that we would struggle for, and that makes us just incredibly happy and joyful. And bringing this aspect back is something that happens in the now. It's not something like a goal or a vision or something you're striving towards to, but with quality of life, you're creating something already in the now that helps you actually doing what you want to bring into this world. And that is something that you have very visible, very simple, like written down in your own words, in your own things. And that guides whatever you're doing. So this holistic context is something that happens on these different layers. And that is something you can do for yourself, for your farm, for your organization, for your community, to describe what we all can agree on, what is important to us more than anything else. And this piece is then actually the thing that helps us to frame lives, our work, but also our decisions. And it helps us to fill it with meaningful actions and meaningful tools and processes and decisions. So if we're in a community to figure out what kind of new building do we want to have? Do we want to have a new building? Do we want to implement our design principles with biomimicry? Do we want something like planet-centered design or design thinking? Or do we want that new solar power? Is there something else? And we always have this holistic context for us defined that brings us again and again that this is why it's important for us to live here and to be in this community. So the context helps us to make decisions not based on I like you or you don't like me, or I'm older than you, or I have more expertise or anything, but it helps us to like, no, we all agreed on we want these things as quality of life and want to strive towards these things. So coming from this, let's make the best decision. So we're back into management. We're not into skills, we're not into certain practices or tools, we're just at how do we actually manage the farm, the couple, the community. So when we have together be like, okay, we know we're all interconnected and we see this as a whole and see this as a living system, and we have defined our personal holistic context that we say all together, this is important to us, then we can start making decisions. Then we can start bringing it to life through processes and tools and other things that we use. This is a German version of it, but there are like context checks to help us guide our decisions and not having the, I think this is a stupid idea coming into this, but actually helping us guiding these decisions in a holistic way of short-term, long-term, ecological, financially, social, sustainability, like all these aspects, bringing it together. Do we actually tackle the root cause in this? And this is the phone case of one of my farmers who says, like, I always have to keep this with me because otherwise I fall back into decision making, how we're used to, how we're trained to, or how we always have done it, not connected to our context or our holistic context, and not connected to all these different layers that we keep forgetting, all these different aspects that we want a good decision to be based on. And because we're in a living system, the other aspect with any kind of process, any kind of tool, any kind of thing you're bringing into this is that we're always thinking we'll plan something, and then we go out and monitor and see if it actually happens. And that is something that we do with this ecological outcome verification, this ecological monitoring is we think, because bringing the cows over here, that next year there will be more grass, as a simple example. But we also assume we are wrong because it's a living system and we have absolutely no idea what actually will happen. And that is something I feel in nature when working with a natural living system. We kind of feel like, okay, yeah, there's definitely something that we cannot control. But once we put this into our social, in our organizations, in our companies, we still think we control. We still think we know the outcome. If I make this decision or change the team, bring a new person into the team. But all the time, this is actually happen wherever we are, in our communities, in our organizational constructs. We always plan something and we have no idea what will really happen. So going out, monitoring, controlling, like changing something when we monitor that something is going off is one of these other very, very important aspect of doing management differently. And especially the assumption that we go with, that we expect we are wrong. We don't think that we're right. We always think we are wrong. So mindset, holistic context, and then decision-making and processes, expecting we are wrong, is what makes farmers and ranchers do amazing work. If it is working with bison on very degraded land in Colorado, where you have to make the decision, can we actually feed this big herd with the grass? Do we think the animal impact is good? Do we think we will get rain? But it's also in being in southern France and coming from a very degraded land on the left, and then using the tool of animals and animal impact with the picture on the right, where Leonard just put his sheep for a night. It's the same place, and you just have a different kind of management, and suddenly nature reacts in a way that you actually had no clue it would happen. We have a wonderful business operation that I was staying at, had the fact, the question of how do we combine wildfire prevention with managing forests together with the timber companies and the community living next door in California, and having 2,000 goats and having 3 herders that we need to pay. So bringing in this complexity in our decision-making also means we can stack businesses. It doesn't matter what you are managing, it's just the way how you make decisions on these things. And there are multiple more examples I would love to share about, because it's everywhere and it's never a specific thing that happens. It's never, oh, this only happens in this climate with these people. It is the way how you manage and how you make decisions within your context. And what that actually creates, after all, if we start managing this way, we get out of this reactive state that we often are in, this driven state that we're often in. We get even over this being in an ego and a protective space where we need to take care of ourselves first. The more we manage in this way, the more we make decisions holistically together with our context, the more we step into this state of being purposeful. And the more purposeful we can be, the more access we also have to our own potential, and the more impact we create with whatever we're doing. So holistic management fits onto one slide. It is a useful tool to actually bring all these theories we have about systems, all the complexity we figure out when working with these big whole global supply chain, breaking it down and making it very manageable for a farm manager, a rancher, a farm team to work with nature towards something that is bigger, but also that is healthier for themselves. And especially because they're doing it and it's not just stays on a beautiful slide. And that's what I kind of gave as a quick intro, that everything happens in relationships to our nature, to us being here in this virtual room, and that is after all regeneration, being in these relationships. that was it for this quick, crazy overview of what the heck is Leon actually doing in working with people. And it is mostly bringing people together in seeing different, observing different, and then starting to make decisions differently and continuously differently.